Today, I find myself quarantined in my room at Wolfington Hall, having tested positive for COVID a week ago. I hope to be liberated later today at the latest. In the meantime, we're going to reflect on some verses from Isaiah 29, today's first reading, while also remembering that we celebrate the feast of St. Francis Xavier tomorrow. Xavier left Rome in 1542, 2 years after the founding of the Society of Jesus. He traveled to South India and from there made at least 3 trips to Southeast and East Asia over the next 10 years. In honor of his stay in Japan in 1550, today we're going to visit the city of Kamakura, about an hour south of Tokyo, to see the Diabutsu. This statue of the Buddha was cast in bronze in about 1250, and so was already 300 years old when Xavier visited Japan. In this country, we often speak of enlightenment as the central spiritual dynamic of Buddhism. This term risks implying a gathering of intellectual content that gives rise to wisdom, whereas an English verb like awakening or realizing emphasizes that Buddhism gives priority to the process of growing in wisdom rather than the content. In some sense, the product is contentless. The following sentences from Isaiah 29 speak of the Jewish version of this process of awakening or realizing, to describe what the Messiah will do when he comes. On that day, the deaf shall hear the words of a book, and out of the gloom and darkness the eyes of the blind shall see. On that day, in other words, the Messiah will engage with people. People will find themselves awakening to words and sights to which they had been deaf or blind, and realize a truth that had been obscured. As that process unfolds, Isaiah continues, the lowly will ever find joy in the Lord, and the poor rejoice in the Holy One of Israel. The lowly are all who have been deaf, and the poor those who have been blind, in other words, all of us. You may remember the story of Helen Keller, a story metaphorically true of all of us. When she realizes that the feeling of water from the pump connects with the sign that Annie Sullivan is making in her palm, she sees that she can hear and speak. She can communicate her interior self to those outside her. This is what the Messiah does for everyone. For us, the war in the Ukraine may seem very remote, but photos of the battles and the cities help us feel compassion for the human men, women, and children there. This experience of their suffering may lead us to the deeper realization, the awareness that we are united with their suffering through our compassion, because we too suffer. Suddenly we perceive Jesus on the cross in a new way. A crucifix with its corpus makes a cross without a corpus seem pale and insignificant. People who have felt unloved or abandoned, or people who feel as though their lives have no meaning, or who have no hope, can experience a realization of being part of something greater, of the goodness in the world. Sometimes the experience comes simply through, say, a beautiful day, or through a sudden sense of interconnectedness. The Lord whom you seek will suddenly come to his temple, says the prophet Malachi. And this new realization, this experience of hope follows on. In the first 100 years, this Buddha was housed in a wooden structure. Storms blew the structure away, and for 700 or so years, this peaceful Buddha has withstood rain, storms, and tsunami. So it is with all who find deeper peace through realizations, and who learn to live in those newer places as those places emerge.